Alright, it's time to rate every episode of Velma. Season 1, as the show has been renewed, it's coming back for another season, but at the time of this recording, the show only has one season. The rating system will be a letter grade system, A through F, and the ratings will come down to how much I like the episode. Alright, it's time. Episode 1, Velma. This episode started with Daphne and her friends completely nude in the shower room. Nasty. They're in high school. Anyways, they were just talking until a masked figure that would later reveal themselves to be Velma, she went in there and attacked Daphne with a crowbar as a joke. Shortly after that, Velma opened her locker and found Brenda's brainless dead body in there. That, combined with Velma walking around in a suspicious outfit, made her the number one suspect in Brenda's murder. With this, Velma was given a day to solve the mystery to clear her name, which would be a problem for her because she's not into mystery solving anymore. This is because Velma thinks that her mystery solving is the reason for her mother's disappearance, and every time she tries to solve a mystery, she hallucinates. The only way that she can get rid of these hallucinations is by laughing, at least for now. Anyways, Velma got the idea that Fred killed Brenda because she took a picture of him in the bathroom at Spooner's malt shop. So Norville drove Velma to Fred's house. She broke in, looked through Norville's camera that was in Fred's house. Then Fred showed up, saying that Brenda knew his secret, that he hadn't gone through puberty yet. So he walked towards Velma, intending to pay her to keep quiet, but he got shot by Daphne's moms because it looked like he was going to kill Velma. That made Fred the number one suspect in Brenda's murder, and it got the label off of Velma. The episode ended with Norville and Velma finding Krista's dead body in Velma's recycling bin. This episode is going to get a C. The fact that I had to watch this episode multiple times to even figure out all of the details of the plot loses this episode a lot of points. In the end, this episode is boring. I mean, there's a moment that's memorable, the shower scene, but it's not memorable for good reasons. It's memorable because it was so disgusting. There's nothing in this episode that's amazing or memorable for positive reasons. In my original review of Velma episode 1, I said that I thought it was cool how Debbie Ryan was in this episode after I had just finished watching Insatiable, and I gave it a few points for that. But that won't be a factor here, so yeah, it's gonna get a C. Episode 2, The Candyman. In the last episode, Velma got her confidence back when it came to mystery solving, and she wants to find her mother now. So she asked Daphne for her mother's cold case files, to which Daphne said that she'll give them to her for $500. So Norville tried to raise $500 for Velma so she'd go out with him. Yep, Shaggy is a simp in this show. But yeah, Velma also tried to raise the money by working for Daphne, selling drugs like Zoinks, Jeepers, Mystery Machine, and Ganja. Daphne sells drugs because she wants to raise money to hire a private investigator to find her biological parents, which will come into play later. But yeah, Velma is terrible at selling drugs because she just can't stop making snarky comments. Another little story was about how Velma's father was going against Velma representing Fred because winning that case could make him rich, which would come in handy by keeping his pregnant girlfriend Sophie happy. So his plot was about making Fred look so innocent to show that he's not the killer. Things started to get off the ground. Even Velma got on that Fred is innocent train for a bit, but then they pushed it too far when they embarrassed Fred in court for being an incompetent, spoiled rich kid and not even being able to cut a piece of steak. So he got up, holding the knife, saying that he could have killed those girls if he wanted to, thinking that would earn him some respect, but it got him right back at square one. Guilty. The episode ended with Daphne giving Velma the cold case files and Velma finding out that the last place her mother's cell phone pinged was at Fred's house. Also, since there was a lot of attraction between them in this episode, when Velma hallucinated, Daphne kissed her to get rid of those hallucinations and they started making out. This episode definitely had more of a cohesive story than the last episode. Everything Velma and Daphne was fun with the drug dealing and the kissing because I actually liked their relationship, so yeah, they were fun. But Fred's plot was mid and Norville's simp plot was bad, earning this episode a C plus rating. Episode 3, Velma Kai. In this episode, Velma and Norville went to visit Fred in prison to interrogate him, get some answers based on the evidence that Velma found from her mother's cold case file. But since Velma got banned from the prison because of her hallucinations, that left the job up to Norville. In the end, Norville couldn't fish any valuable information out of Fred as it relates to Dia Dinkley, invalidating Velma's evidence for the moment. While that was going on, Velma wanted to find out more about her kiss with Daphne and their relationship. But it was difficult for her because the school had this self-defense class tournament for the girls in which they'd be pit against each other. When trying to get an answer out of Daphne on if she likes Velma, Daphne said that she has more at stake than Velma, basically saying that she's too popular for her. This caused Velma to expose Daphne. Velma read Daphne's journal to the school, basically saying that she's not this perfect girl and she has sessions with the guidance counselor to discuss her issues. She made Daphne vulnerable, which was the point of this tournament, but no one backed her up and Daphne beat the mess out of Velma. In the end, they talked about why they stopped hanging out and agreed to just be friends. This episode is going to get a B-. I like its packaging, just two main stories to focus on. Although their storyline wasn't really about mystery solving, I like Daphne and Velma's storyline more than Norville's. I just like their relationship a lot. This was an alright episode of Velma. Episode 4, Velma Makes a List. There's a lot to unpack here. So 2 weeks after not having a murder, the town had a celebration, only to immediately get notified of another murder with the same brain removal tactic. Because of this, Fred was let out of the slammer because he was in jail when the murder took place. Just because the killer is using a similar tactic, that doesn't mean that Fred didn't previously kill someone before using the same tactic. What type of hitman absolution mall cop security is this? Anyways, after this, the school held this little meeting talking about how all of the victims were hot girls, and since they don't have the money to protect every student, they're going to rank the 5 hottest girls at Crystal Cove High and give them a personal police detail. What am I watching? Anyways, Velma got mad that a bunch of middle-aged white guys are going to make this call, which I have to admit, without adding that white part, I agree. That is very creepy that adults were going to make that call. But yeah, they gave Velma the responsibility of making that list, which opened her up to a lot of campaigns to save certain girls. But then at a certain point, Velma got mad because making this list would only validate what she hates about men's ideas and beauty norms. So eventually, she got a list of hot girls from Fred. Then, when she went to town hall, after some complaining, the mayor saw her side. He suggested that Velma teach those girls how to not be hot, give them some uggo lessons. So she tried to make the girls ugly, which in the end backfire. The girls revolted because no girl should have to change who she is to not be murdered. In the end, when Sophie was about to have her baby and there were a bunch of folks crowding the way to the hospital, Velma and the popular girls used their different definitions of womanhood to clear a way. For the second plot, Daphne finally got enough money to hire a detective to find her birth parents. But because of the killer being on the loose and her being one of the hottest girls at the school, she got locked up in her house. But while Norville was at her house trying to get her to spill, trying to jot down some reasons why Velma would like a person, a geode from the crystal mines flew into Daphne's room and they busted out of the room to go to the Crystal Cove Historical Society to learn more about this. What Daphne learned was that she felt like she had been to the crystal mines before, as a baby. Also, she felt like the geode was thrown by her birth parents, so they went to the crystal mines. Also, in the third plot, Velma gave Fred a book about feminine mystique, and by the end of it all, he revealed that he likes Velma. Alright, I don't really care about the Fred plot, but the Velma plot was a complete bust. When she said that we have one day to unlearn a lifetime of internalized misogyny, that's when they completely lost me. I don't care. I don't want to hear about this stuff in a TV show. This is supposed to be entertainment for everyone. When you bring wokeness and identity politics into it, that completely alienates a section of your audience. I'm not watching TV or a show like this to be lectured about societal problems. I'm watching TV for entertainment. If I wanted to hear that stuff, I'd go elsewhere. I really like Daphne and Norville's plot, but even that can't save this episode from getting an F. Keep the agendas out of it. Episode 5, Marching Band Sleepover. The first plot was about Norville getting a girlfriend named Gigi. Now, I'm going to talk about the controversy outside of the show. So there was this rumor that Scooby was going to be a black woman and her name was going to be Scooby with an I at the end instead of a Y. So folks took this as a fact, which contributed to the dragging of this show. That's when I knew this show was never going to get a fair chance. The eagerness to just go with that, just to add to the hate train without even fact checking or waiting for confirmation was concerning. Even today, I still hear this talking point when it comes to talking about why Velma is a bad show. I can't change how the show is received, as it has its fair share of valid problems. But one thing that it doesn't deserve any criticism for is the Gigi Scooby thing, because it's false information. It was never a thing. Anyways, getting back on topic, because of Norville spending so much time with Gigi, Velma's hallucinations started getting bad again because Norville wasn't there. This meant that Velma and Fred had to work together. Velma was able to get some information out of Fred, learning that his house used to be owned by a mad scientist named Etna. Also, they went to the Historical Society to look at Etna's journals, only to find out that they were missing. Velma's mother was the last one to look at them. But after Fred showed himself to be a terrible ally, Velma just needed her Norville. Since the mayor made the citywide curfew 9 p.m. and canceled the marching band sleepover, Velma just hosted her own marching band sleepover at her house to pry Norville away from Gigi. Solid plan, could have worked if Gigi didn't become a band kid out of nowhere. So she and Velma had this flute off, basically fighting over Norville, to which Gigi won. After this, Velma begged Gigi for some alone time with Norville, and Gigi ended up spitting out that Dr. Etna is actually Norville's grandmother. But they couldn't really expand on it more because the band kids started tearing up the house, so they had to take a cop car from Daphne's parents to go out past curfew to get some grub for the band kids. They got in a situation where Velma had to sacrifice herself so they wouldn't get caught, so she got run over by a cop and put into a cop car with the Rogers family. Velma saw Norville's mom in some ridiculous getup, but in exchange for not posting the pictures online, Mrs. Rogers is going to tell Velma everything she knows about her mother, Etna, later. For the second plot, Daphne went to the Crystal Mines, met her parents in disguise, went back home and searched up the Crystal Mines gang and learned that her parents were robbers. She was excited about finding her parents, but no one like Velma or Norville would even listen to her, as they were focused on their own things, that being the marching band sleepover. In the end, Daphne snuck out and her parents took off their disguises. I really did not like that lame marching band sleepover. I don't even like band in real life because of my high school days. It's lame. That flute showdown was so horrible, and outside of that, the atmosphere at the sleepover was boring. Daphne's plot was much better than whatever that was, and if it hadn't been for her plot, then this episode would be getting an F rather than a D. Episode 6, The Sins of the Fathers and Some of the Mothers. This was a very family-centric episode, as the title would suggest. For Velma's plot, Principal Rogers told Velma just about everything she knew, like how in 1970, Etna found a way to keep the human brain functioning outside of the body. And this guy named Harry wanted to find a way to put the brains of soldiers into meddling kids to stop them from ruining their plans. But Edna's experiment failed, and she closed off her lab and got committed to the Crystal Cove Insane Asylum. Principal Rogers was about to give her more information until Velma had a hallucination, so Principal Rogers said that she wouldn't give out any more information until her hallucinations stopped. Velma and Norville thought that Velma got those hallucinations because she had daddy issues because her dad doesn't love her, so she spent a good amount of this episode trying to get on her dad's good side. In the end, Velma stopped caring about her dad, got the information from Principal Rogers anyways, learned that Edna's house was put up for sale, Fred's family bought it, and her mother was in the house looking for Edna's lab. Velma's dad finally started believing Velma when they went to the lab and found a paper that said Jinkies on the ground. For Daphne's plot, she went back to the mines, learned more about why her birth parents became criminals, and spent some bonding time with them. This was until they ditched her again, only using Daphne as an insurance policy in case her parents tried to stop them on their way out of town. But they were arrested, and Daphne found out that she was abandoned by her birth parents twice actually, this time and as a baby. This was actually a good episode of Velma. There was a bigger focus on the mysteries, and because of that, the story progressed forward a lot. Even when they weren't actively solving mysteries or gaining information, the family bonding was nice to see. Of course, there was some cringe like Velma pole dancing at the strip club to get her dad's attention, but that's not going to stop this episode from getting an A grade. Best episode of the series so far. Episode 7, Fog Fest. In this episode, the narrative that took over was that there's no serial killer. It's just the ghost of Edna, so that ended the city-wide curfew. Anyways, Velma found the serial killer's phone number, but when she called, they answered, but they didn't say anything. But based on the noises, Velma was able to figure out that the serial killer was at Fogfest, so getting to Fogfest became Velma's main goal. But no girl could go to Fogfest alone. They needed a man for protection, to which, of course, Velma had a problem with that. She's made her opinions on this type of stuff known already. But yeah, this got Velma to dress up as a man for entry. While at Fogfest, Velma realized that being a man is easy because she scarfed down some chicken and no one thought it was disgusting. Also, she didn't wash her hands after using the bathroom and no one judged her. She also did the worm and everyone applauded. So because of this, she used her power as a man to convince everyone that the serial killer is real and it's not a ghost, and everyone believed her and she won Fog King. After this, Velma said that no wonder guys are so desperate to hold on to their power because they can get whatever they want, and they showed this montage of everyone liking Velma and opportunities opening up for her just for being a stupid, privileged guy. Just to speed things up, after this, when she was trying to reconnect with Daphne after ignoring her for the past 2 episodes, the serial killer chased them, and this ended with the serial killer disappearing and Velma getting their phone. For the side plots, like I said, one of them was about Daphne dealing with Velma ignoring her, and the other one was about Fred trying to win Fog King to satisfy his parents because they're the best. But he ended up battling Norville for Fog King for most of this episode. Also, at the end of this episode, Fred got taken by the killer. This was an episode where even before this rewatch, I was already confident about what grade it was going to get. It's an easy decision here. I didn't really find Fogfest to be entertaining, so there's that. But my problem with this episode is the same one I had with Velma Makes a List. Men, men, men. This episode was all about bashing men, implying that their hygiene is bad, then saying that it's easy to be a man because no one judges them, then implying that they can work half as hard but they're still respected and they have all of this privilege. Also, when Daphne wanted to fight Velma after Fred blew Velma's cover, Daphne said that she'd punch Velma if men didn't sex-ulize women fighting. And when Velma and Daphne were talking about their problems, Velma said that maybe they should both be guys and stop caring about their feelings so much, implying that guys don't have serious struggles as well. Ugh. This show just can't stop shooting itself in the foot. Velma is at its best when it's about the mysteries. Velma is at its worst when they're trying to make these weird societal statements, causing the show to divide its audience. I'm watching a mystery solving show to see mysteries be solved. If I actually wanted to hear the stuff that they're talking about, then I'd watch something else. This episode is an easy F. Worst episode so far, right after coming off of their best. Ditch the agendas and keep it about the mysteries. Episode 8, A Velma in the Woods. This episode takes place 2 days after Fogfest, and it sees Velma, Daphne, Norville, and Gigi stuck under a rock in this ravine, and they all told stories about how they got there. I just don't like flashback episodes at all. Although they provide context as to why the characters got in the situation that they're in, it's like I already saw the end result, so there's barely any suspense or mystery. I'm just waiting for them to catch up to real time. Most of Fred's flashbacks were about the aftermath of him being taken by the killer and ending up in their lair and finding the brains of the girls that had been murdered. In Daphne's flashback, she blamed Velma for getting them stuck under a rock. Velma and Daphne got into the killer's phone and they only saw a picture of Mount Crystal and they agreed to go there. But on the next day, Daphne wanted to spend the day with Olive until Velma fake hallucinated to get Daphne on board, which made her mad. Then in Gigi's flashback, she blamed Norville, thinking that he asked to go to her cabin near Mount Crystal for a romantic getaway when that was not the case, as he brought Velma and Daphne with him, saying that they wanted to use the cabin to look for the killer. Then in Velma's flashback, when Daphne and Gigi got upset at Norville and Velma for leading them on, they went outside together and Norville revealed that Daphne had a thing for Gigi, so when both of them went outside to interrupt their cuddle session, the ground underneath them collapsed and that's how they got stuck. Wow. Just get to the point. 50% of this episode was flashback filler. Alright, without completely explaining every single detail, the ground collapsed from under them, they ended up in the crystal mines and found out that's how the serial killer travels. Velma and Daphne found Fred in the lair along with the brains. The cave collapsed and Velma's mom saved them and got them out of the cave. The episode ended with Dia saying that she doesn't know the kidnapper. I already explained why I don't like flashback episodes, so that's going to bring this episode down some. But when they stopped with the flashback stuff, this episode was alright, but it won't be enough to get it a C. This episode is going to get a D. The first half really drags this episode down as it's not funny, so it's not providing any entertainment, and in the end, it just felt like filler. Episode 9, Family Woman. So in this episode, Velma found out that her mom has amnesia and they only have 72 hours to get her memories back, so they had to keep Dia happy as that would help. Keeping Dia happy included getting Norville to print out a fake report card for Velma so that Dia would still think that Velma is a high achiever. Velma also had to cover up that her dad had a baby with Sophie by saying that the baby was hers, Velma's, and Norville was the dad. Later on, Velma found a welder's mask in the Rogers office and sent SWAT on him. This destroyed the Rogers house when Mr. Rogers only had the mask to make a sword for Norville. This caused Norville to end his friendship with Velma. Going back to Velma's mother, although she was remembering certain things throughout those 72 hours, when those 72 hours were up, she couldn't remember the serial killer for a moment until she said that the serial killer was her, and the episode ended. For the B plot, it was about the brains of the popular girls getting back to school and making Daphne a pariah because she tried to ditch them in the mines. So she and Fred pretended to go out again to get popular. Although this wasn't a big mystery solving episode, it was more of just Velma trying to keep her mother calm. I've got to say that this episode was actually fine, like it's solid. It kind of felt like filler, as the only thing of real importance happened at the end of this episode, making this episode feel like it was only supposed to be a setup for the finale. But I'll take this filler over a Velma in the Woods filler. I already explained why I don't like flashback episodes. If this episode were a flashback episode that showed me what happened at the end, then the whole episode was working up to get to that point, then I wouldn't be high on this episode. Also, I could actually sit through this episode because it was devoid of cringe and talking about societal problems and stuff like that. Basically everything that makes Velma, Velma. So this episode is going to get a B for just being a stable, reasonable episode. Episode 10, the brains of the operation. In the previous episode, Dia admitted to being the serial killer, so in this episode, she got arrested and it was up to Velma to try and talk to her to see what actually happened. But it was hard for Velma to get arrested because the police wanted Velma nowhere near her mother. She actually had to use Fred's white privilege to get arrested, and she got in the same cell as her mother. I see what they did there, but this show just can't stop dividing their audience. It's like every episode, there's a joke about white people or men. Anyways, when pressed, Dia kept on saying that she wanted to put the brain of a popular girl into Velma. This is because Dia was hypnotized to keep on saying that. Going to Daphne's plot, her birth mother sent her a pocket watch that she thought would be useful in solving the mystery. So when Daphne got to the prison, Velma and Daphne were able to find out that the pocket watch was something that the serial killer used to hypnotize Velma and Dia. Also, they found Harry meeting written inside the watch, and after this, Daphne got into a random car. Idiot! So late at night, Velma found out that her mom's glasses were from Jones Gentleman's Accessories, and she found out that Harry used their pocket watches for hypnosis. So long story short, Velma went to the Jones house, found Daphne and Fred captured, uncovered the killer, and it was Victoria Jones, Fred's mother. There was a whole backstory, but basically the main point was that Victoria wanted to replace Fred's brain with someone more competent so that he'd be able to run the family business. Speeding things up because I don't want to say every little detail of this episode, when there was this chase and Victoria was about to get away, Norville showed up and Victoria fired a bullet at Norville, but he deflected the bullet back her way onto a big stalactite above Victoria, and that was the end of Fred's mother. Velma, Fred, Norville, and Daphne got keys to the city for solving the mystery, and that's the end of this season. This season took place or was released within the span of a month, so it was nice to finally see this mystery get solved after a month of waiting. I'll give them credit for not releasing it all at once and making it a binge watch thing. But I've got to say that I was a bit underwhelmed. Like, I'm not leaving this episode upset or mad, but for a season finale, I was kind of expecting it to be a bit more epic. The only part that I really enjoyed was when Velma broke down the mystery, but that's about it. Outside of that, this episode is average, but it's definitely not their worst, so I'll give it a B grade. Velma was a show that happened. Before rewatching this show, I was high on Velma and satisfied with my experience watching these episodes on release day. And while I'm glad that I got to go back and rewatch these episodes because now that I took some notes, I understand and appreciate the story much more. But on the other hand, rewatching these episodes made me pick up on a lot of stuff that I wasn't paying attention to on the first go around. This show has amazing art, amazing animation, and the mystery was solid. Next season, I would like to see them double down on that stuff and stop using the show as a platform to talk about societal issues. White guy joke here, white guy joke there. There's even a whole episode about bashing men. That doesn't really make for an inclusive experience in an age and era that's all about inclusivity. This show was at its best when it was about the mysteries. This show was at its worst when they were trying to take these stands against societal issues. I don't want to be lectured about that stuff while I'm watching a show about mystery solving. That stuff just immediately taints every episode that it's in. Velma showed flashes that it had the potential to be something when it was about the mysteries. But as long as Velma gets used as an outlet to voice all of these societal opinions, it'll never reach its full potential. I'm here for the mysteries, not for the agendas that are trying to be pushed, especially when most of them are against guys. Like, I'm not backing that stuff up. It is the worst part of the show, and I'm leaving it at that.